Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the extremely important topic of saddle fitting. Now, your horse is never going to perform at his full potential if you ride him in a saddle that isn't fitting him properly. But then on the brighter side, I've seen radical transformation in horses' performance and behavioral problems, or so-called behavioral problems, just by changing the saddle to something that fits him properly. You may only be seeing a fraction of what your horse is capable of, and if you just take the time and the effort to make sure that his saddle fits him well, you could see a real big improvement in his performance. And not only from a performance perspective, it's the right thing to do. It's unkind to be riding your horse in a saddle that's hurt me. So I've got 5 points that you need to go through. I'm not a saddle fitter myself, but I've spoken to quite a few of my saddle fitter mates, and they've all come up with a list of 5 points that you need to check. Well, your saddle needs to pass all 5 of these for you to be your saddle to be considered good enough to ride in. Okay, so first things first. Most people, or a lot of people, tend to put their saddle too far forward up the horse's wither like this, which isn't correct. You need to have it way further back, and I'll explain to you how to check to see whether your saddle's not sitting too far forward. So basically what you do is you run your fingers to the edge of the shoulder blade. You'll feel it dip down like that, and where it dips down, you take 2 fingers and slide that up to your horse's wither. Now your saddle tree, which is basically usually or always where the stud is, needs to be where your finger ends up. So that over there is the correct position for your saddle. Okay, next point. You need to make sure that your saddle isn't too tight around your horse's shoulders. So remember, your horse's shoulder, when he moves back and forwards in that direction. So you need to have space for your horse's saddle you need to have space for your horse's shoulder to be able to move underneath the saddle like that. If it's constricting his shoulder, then you will be restricting his movement, and obviously it becomes painful because that bone has nowhere to go except under a very tight saddle. So what you need to do is put your saddle on, girth it up, jump onto your horse, and you should be able to relatively easily slide your hand under the saddle like that, where the shoulder is. So if it's extremely tight, then you know that your saddle is too tight over the shoulder and the withers, and you need to get a saddle fitter in. So with you on the saddle, you should be able to relatively easily slide your hand under this part of the saddle where his shoulder blade is and where it's likely to move to. Alright, on to the next point, which can also be can be very problematic if it isn't correct. It's the clearance over your horse's spine and wither. Now, obviously, with your weight on it and you jumping, if there's no clearance, this hard part of the saddle would be banging on your horse's wither and spine and can be extremely painful. So what you need to do to make sure that your saddle has enough clearance is put it on his back like that, in the correct position, not too far forward, and you should be able to get a minimum of 3 fingers between the tree or the pommel, underneath the pommel and your horse's wither. So 3 fingers clearance from the wither to the pommel, and then you want at least 1 finger either side of the wither, because your horse obviously bends, and you know he needs a little bit more clearance on each side of his wither. The panel needs to just be a little bit off his wither, at least 1, preferably 2 fingers off the wither. So 3 fingers off the wither to the pommel, and 1 or 2 fingers either side of the wither clearance. And you should ideally be able to stand in front of your horse and look down his back and see that there's clearance all the way through to the end of the saddle.